Alrighty, covering a cake in fondant is one of those skills that you just have to practice. My best tip to you is make sure your fondant is well kneaded. That means that when you're placing the fondant on the cake, it's much less likely to crack or get elephant skin. I like to put it over my rolling pin because then it's less likely to stretch when I lift it to place it over the cake. Some people like to get 2 hands underneath. I also do that sometimes. Depends on your preference. Lay the fondant over the cake. And the first thing you need to do, and you need to do this quite quickly, is to attach the top of the cake and just around that top edge. Once you've done that, you can relax a little bit. If you don't get onto this quickly, then that fondant will stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch, and then the weight of the fondant will naturally pull that fondant down, and it will cause elephant skin, tears. So just get onto this bit as quick as you can, okay? Once you've got that, then you can relax a little bit, as I said. All you need to do, this takes a lot of practice, but you are working around the skirt. So this edge, or this sort of flappy fondant around the bottom of the cake, is called your skirt. Every time you are pressing or attaching more fondant around the edge of the cake, you're pulling the skirt out, and it just ever so slightly stretches the fondant so you can attach the fondant without creases. It's one of those skills that, again, like I said, and it sounds awful to say it, but you just have to have a go at it and practice. So every time I'm working my way around the cake, I'm pulling that skirt out. If I see a crease starting to form, as there was just then, I'm just pulling that skirt out. Only a little bit. You don't want to pull it too hard because then, of course, it's going to tear. So keep working around the cake, and at some point, hopefully, you'll get to a point where you've hit the bottom edge, and it's just a case of making sure there are no last little bits to attach. So I'm working around that bottom edge now. I've hit the board, so I'm in a good spot now. This is when I start to breathe. Even though I've done this many times, it still freaks me out every time. And I've had to fix many mistakes whilst covering a fondant cake. So please don't be disheartened if it doesn't work for you first time. It is a very frustrating task sometimes. This particular cake was going to be an army cake, an army shirt. So you can see the top there isn't even that level. I was not going for precision here. I knew I was going to be decorating a lot of detail on there, so you can hide a lot of flaws if you need to. The words of a true professional there. So you can see the skirt now is flat to the board. So now we cut off that skirt that we don't need anymore. And I'm just getting as close as I can to the edge of the cake. Pull that skirt off. Make sure you wrap up any scrap pieces of fondant straight away, otherwise it will dry out. Next up, using your cake smoother or your fondant smoother, whatever you want to call it, I'm just working around the edge of the cake, making sure that all the edges around the bottom are tucked in. Now here I had a little bit of a fold, and a little bit of a spare edge. So I'm just cutting away the pieces of fondant that I don't need. Then again, going over it with the smoother, just to get as smooth an edge as I can. And you'll find as you're smoothing around the edge of the cake, or around the outside of the cake, that you may get little extra pieces of fondant that just naturally work their way out. You just simply cut them off. If you do find that you get any little piece of elephant skin, it's called, where you get kind of like a rough texture of the fondant, then usually just the warmth of your finger will be enough to work those creases out, or the elephant skin out. Literally, obviously with a clean hand, just slowly smooth over the area. The warmth of your finger should work out any imperfections. If you've got any edges of fondant or any pieces of fondant around the base that are not quite meeting the board, where I've obviously cut it too close, again, you can use that smoother just to slowly push really gently, push the fondant to the board. I say do this slowly and carefully. I mean with not too much pressure, because otherwise you're going to rip the fondant near the top. So just really gently working that fondant down to the board. And you can see my beautiful sticker there from my daughter. You will probably find in many of these videos I have stickers or drawings or things on my hands. The joys of having a 4-year-old. Oh, I love her. If you're looking to get a really sharp edge on your fondant, there is a better technique for achieving that. There's a couple of different techniques, in fact, that you can use, but here I'm not going for a particularly sharp edge. You can see here I'm just using the warmth of my finger to smooth out any little imperfections that I've found. Perhaps I didn't knead my fondant quite well enough if I've got little cracks around the edges. If you really need to smooth out the top surface, I didn't need to do this, but I just thought I would show you. Sometimes if you've been working the fondant with your finger, things like that, it can get just a little bit sticky. So you don't want to do this without adding a bit of corn flour or cornstarch onto the surface of the fondant. Otherwise it's going to pull, create tears or imperfections in your fondant, which is exactly what you're trying to avoid. So if you do find that your fondant is getting sticky or has for some reason got some moisture on it, then just a little bit of corn flour, cornstarch on your cake smoother, on your fondant smoother, and that's going to make sure that you don't add any imperfections that you are trying to avoid. Once you've decorated your cake, if you have got any of this dust left on your cake, then you can either brush with a little bit of a very damp brush, or if you've got a steamer, then this will be your obviously best option for steaming out any little bits of powder that are left. I'm brushing it here with a dry brush to get majority of it off, but the finished piece will get steamed so that none of this white powder or cornstarch is left on the cake. Working with fondant really is a labour of love. You've got to really enjoy working with it. And I found I actually really hated working with it at the beginning, but the more you do it, the more practice you get, the more you realise how many options are out there when you're working with fondant. If you find any air bubbles, just use a pen, make a small hole into the middle of the bubble, and then push the fondant in towards that hole that you have created, and you should find that it disappears. Thank you so much for watching. Hope this has been helpful. Remember, if you have a question about anything you've seen, or if you've given it a go and something happened, because this is a paid tutorial, you can flick me through an email and I will do my absolute best to help you and to answer your question. Thank you so much. Bye bye.